Welcome one, welcome all to Behind the Wheel, our ESPN Esports Rocket League program. Thank you very much for watching us on Twitch, the ESPN app, on Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Arda, I'm your traffic cop for the festivities every single week. If you only have an hour to get completely caught up on all things Rocket League, we know that there's a lot to watch. This is the program for you to get you completely up to date on everything that has happened, whether it's the grid, whether it's regionals, whether it's EU or NA. This is your one-stop shop. Thank you for all the feedback, by the way. We have heard everything that you've been saying on Twitter at ESPN_esports, also on Reddit. So we're continually evolving and changing this program to make sure that it is serving you, the Rocket League community, best. And speaking of the Rocket League community, we couldn't do a Rocket League show until eventually having one of the long-standing members, the hype man, if you will, onto the show himself. You've seen him on NV Grid broadcast. You've seen him on the RLCS time and time again. It's Jorby, folks. Jorby, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem, Arda. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of this. And, you know, there's plenty of prominent community figures out there that could definitely hold the, this is a prominent community show for Rocket League. I'm not the only one for sure.
Wow, you're too modest, man. This was your moment to, like, boast and say, hey, I'm better than them all. I'm way better than Leaf for sure. Like, you could have said that, but you didn't.
I'll only do that for Gibbs and Stacks. Those are the only two people I'll ever say I'm better than.
So we got a lot to get to, man. We got to whip around the league. That's what we got to do. That's going to be the name of our new segment moving forward, by the way. A little whip around the league. We got tons to talk about, especially in North America. Regional and a grid, then in the books. Again, let's start with the grid. G2, we had both Jazzo and Chrome of Space Station and G2 respectively on the show last week. They are good buddies. They love to jaw-jack at each other. They love to chirp each other. And they ended up meeting again this week. But G2 were the better of it. It seems as though Team House, full air conditioning G2 were at it, and they were victorious. What did you notice from the grid this week?
The grid, G2, they hit the next level and had just kind of confirmed to all of us that the Team House is a thing and that they are there to play. I mean, to me, like, Chicago is the X factor of G2. They seem to rise and fall whenever he is doing well or not. And those just come from, like, the minor things with Chicago. But this weekend and in the grid last week, I just saw nothing but Chicago on point at every single moment, and they were really gelling as a unit. They looked like vintage G2, and that's kind of what we expect out of them week in and week out now.
So what I liked about this G2 performance, Jorby, is that they went through three heavyweights in the playoffs en route to winning, right? They beat Envy, they beat Space Station, they beat NRG. We're going to get to your top five in a little bit, so I don't want to spoil anything here. But I do want to talk about how impressive that is and how much that would factor into a placement on, say, a power ranking. Because for them to defeat all of those three teams back to back to back really means something.
It absolutely means something. And Envy are probably the team that I think has been the most threatening to Space Station's title, if you will, as everyone still calls them the best in North America for good reason. But typically those top four teams, Space Station, G2, NRG, and Envy, you only really see Space Station beating everybody consistently. We hadn't seen G2 beat everybody. They usually end up dropping, to one of those top four teams. But you're absolutely right in that beating all three in a row to get there was mightily impressive. And I mean, I remember I casted the Envy side of NVG2's match, and they were just so fast. They were oppressive, and they, like I said, vintage G2 to actually go through and beat Space Station right after that. I mean, G2 and Space Station are starting to get to the point where you might argue 1A, 1B with the trades that have been happening lately. So I definitely think you have to give them some credence in a power ranking for that kind of performance.
By the way, speaking of G2, JNaps and Rizzo are now the longest standing duo of consecutive days together on one team in Rocket League. 1,300 days and counting. The rule is, of course, that it has to be one American and one Canadian for it to count. So it's just nice for Rizzo and JNaps to further that long-standing tradition. I think Canadian Cloud9 is number 2, correct? And I think that they're also American and Canadian.
Yeah, Cloud9 was number 2. And I didn't think that. I thought if anyone was going to beat that long-standing record, it would come from G2 or Space Station. But I don't think that a Canadian is on Space Station, so never mind about that. I didn't.
They can't win, and they can't. They're not allowed.
The issue there. Okay, yeah. No, not allowed. Not 2 Americans. Not having it.
We talked earlier. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We talked earlier about how Chrome and Jazzo were on the show last week, and we had a lot of fun. We talked about air conditioning. We talked about optimal G2 wind conditions, and it seems as though that's exactly what happened. But just to refresh everybody's memory on the pleasantries that were exchanged between these two esteemed coaches, here's a little reminder.
Start with Jazzo. Spit your fire, man. Back your team. G2 going to take the whole thing. What's happening?
The regionals are going to end up being SSG versus G2 in one semi and NRG versus NB in the other. And NB is going to beat NRG, and then the winner of SSG G2 will beat NB in the grand finals to take it. And I think it's a toss-up.
You know, Jazzo, I think you're going to make it to the finals here. We're just going to absolutely destroy you guys. So
have fun.
Hopefully you can make it there this time.
Have fun dreaming, bud. Have fun dreaming. Let me know when you wake up. I'll be right there for you.
And of course, Jazzo spent most of the show, Jorby, saying how much he hates EU and how their teams are garbage and it's a giant dumpster fire and everything about EU sucks and G2 is the greatest team in the world. I mean, it was very, very fair and balanced analysis. Yeah.
Look, Jazzo's probably got a bit of a chip on his shoulder because we've been hearing for years in Rocket League how Europe is the superior region. And G2 are usually at the top of the list in North America, so they're usually on the chopping block when it comes, well, I think all these EU teams can beat G2, so that's really funny. John's like, nah, they all suck now. That's great to me. I love that.
Let's move on to the NA Regional. Of course, it kicked off on the 12th, and it will conclude on the 20th. This is the second regional event, and Stage 1 is complete, and there were some upsets in terms of not necessarily in terms of who moved on from Group A. I think a lot of those teams that you saw were expected. Maybe a couple of teams left off the list that maybe you might be surprised by. But really some matches, in particular, Kansas City Pioneers going 3-0, including victories over Space Station and G2. What made them so lethal this past weekend, Jorby?
It was the speed. And to be honest with you, Arda, it was beast mode. First of all, to have the gall to name yourself beast mode and then actually have a beast mode, props to you. That's next level. But to me, the unsung hero of the Pioneers was Rapid. Rapid made so many clean touches that allowed the Pioneers to stay aggressive on offense. They wanted to play fast. They wanted to harass you on the goal line. They wanted to play physical. They did all of those things consistently and with success. The one thing I thought was really impressive about their win against Space Station was that Space Station are usually playing how they want to play because they're always the fastest team on the pitch. They're the best at change-ups. They're the best at slowing the play down and then immediately speeding it back up because they have 3 players that are capable of carrying and doing whatever they want with the ball. But the Pioneers didn't give Space Station any space. The key midfield boost, it allows you to just push forward and just constantly harass the goal line and the backboard. And that's what the Pioneers did. They didn't give any angles to Space Station or G2 for that matter. I was I was so overly impressed with their performance against G2
Mhm.
that I was like, if they look like this next week, then you have to put them in the conversation they might go the distance. But that's part of the difficulty of this regional is you have to be good over multiple weekends. So we'll see. But that was one of the best performances from an underdog team I think we've ever seen.
And we've been getting a lot of those good stories, right? I mean, even Alpine, I'm looking at Alpine Esports. They went 3-1 on the weekend. They've had some impressive performances and some impressive results over the last several months, even through the off season at the ESPN Esports Invitational, getting out of groups at that tournament. But when I look at this list, I want to know which teams concern you. Like, I see version 1 on the wrong side of the Mendoza line here, not qualifying. I see Omelette, a team that many people were talking up at the start of the season. Which teams are you concerned about when you look at ones that didn't qualify?
I'm concerned about version 1, the first one you mentioned. This was supposed to be a team that was contending for the top spots. You have Torment and Gimmick, world champions, and then they add AXB. When version 1 first came together with AXB was popping off. He was scoring a lot of goals. They were looking fluid in their rotations. And then the wheels just fell off the wagon. All of a sudden, they were losing challenges and they weren't in position ever. There was just miscue upon miscue. I felt like they returned back to form a little bit this past weekend, but obviously not enough because they were able to play up to the higher competition, but then when it came to teams that they should beat, I don't know what is happening with version 1, and I don't know what really the solution is for this team, but I don't think the chemistry is there right now, and maybe it's just a matter of sticking with it. I think there were improvement points for version 1, but this wasn't the expectation. The expectation was that you were going to make stage 2. They have consistently underperformed, and in my opinion, the most disappointing team this season.
Well, a team that definitely did not stick together is eUnited, another team that did not make it past stage 1 of the second regional. And they did make some changes. On Sunday, they added Tristan from the bench, and they moved Hockser in a very surprising move to the reserve squad. So the eUnited tweet said, most recently, Tristan was a standout collegiate player at University of Akron. That's one of his accolades going into his starting position. Hockser said, happy to announce I'm warming the bench for eUnited. See you guys eventually. Maybe there was a little bit of contention here building up over the last several months. Some tweets that were posted by Hockser and then deleted, whatever the case may be. But the timing of this is very interesting too. What's your reaction to everything that is happening here with Hockser and eUnited?
I am curious about the decision from purely a performance-based stand for everything that I've read. And this seems to be a performance-based decision. However, I only have so much information, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that none of us are privy to. So without that information, I can only speculate so far. But if I'm going to speculate about performance, Hockser wasn't the guy to bench. You don't bench who is arguably the best player on your team if you're trying to get better and you're trying to improve. Not only that, but I do agree that if a decision was made that a poor result would result in a player getting benched, I don't know how I feel about putting unnecessary pressure on a player to perform, but I do think that there is a give and take there. And it really depends on what decisions and what conversations were going on behind the scenes. But I went over Hockser's games from the first regional and the second regional. I didn't delve into the grid too much just because the grid is kind of like a proving ground for teams and they don't take it to the utmost 100% seriousness or rather competitive seriousness a lot of the time. But I didn't see anything but maybe a couple of minor errors from Hockser overall. He rarely put his team in bad positions. He almost always hit the ball with solid contact into a space that was productive for his team. And I don't think he's the problem at all. I think eUnited just don't have any team chemistry. They don't generate team plays. They're not creative on offense. They scramble on defense. They don't communicate. And this is what happens when a team that has clear communication issues goes through these types of things. You don't bench a player in the middle of a season if there isn't something going on in the quote locker room, or the Discord call is more accurate for esports.
What do you think? Honestly, is Hockser the kind of guy that has poor communication? Does he have a bad attitude, or is this just a misstep? Like, what would you say if you were to guess, based on what you've seen in the Rocket League scene and what you know about eUnited and Hockser, what would you guess?
I honestly, I've never really heard anything about Hockser that has been overtly negative about his personality. That might be the case, but I don't know. To me, when I look at a team like eUnited and I see their issues on the field and their lack of chemistry, it's more than just one player. It's not one player's fault. Now, there could be somebody who's agitating the rest of the Discord call, but it's really hard for me to say because I haven't really heard anything, nothing scrub killer like about Hockser. So,
Prawn, who's a regular viewer of the show and consistently in our chat, and Prawn, thank you for that. We very much appreciate it. Says, I think Hockser might not have been the best, but probably the most consistent. I mean, if your team is struggling, right? Isn't consistency one of the things that you would cherish and value the most? To me, when I look at this from the outside, Jorby, honestly, it seems like there has to be some external reason that we are unaware of. Maybe there was a blow up. Maybe there was a disagreement. Maybe there was a falling out, like something that we may not hear of, because it just seems odd for somebody who many people consider to be the best player on the team. Like if you were to ask people would consider him to be at least top 2, if not the best player on the team. And then all of a sudden he's being benched for and I want to look at it from Tristan's point of view in a second, but like, it has to be something that we don't know.
Yeah, that's basically what I chalked it up to. I talked to other prominent community members and I was seeing if anybody had any insight as to what was going on with this decision. And it's everyone's in the same place. It feels like it's something more than performance because it's weird that Hockser is the guy that's picked for all the reasons that you said. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe it's the players. Maybe it's something between the players and the orgs. Hockser tweeting at Cloud9 might be indicative of that. He was in talks to go to Cloud9 the whole way back in January, and we don't really know exactly 100% what happened with those talks between Cloud9 and eUnited. So hard to say.
So ZTM12 in the chat said maybe he wanted to leave and they said, okay, the only reason why I would be confused about that is because of Hockser's tweet, happy to announce I'm warming the bench for eUnited. Like that has a little bit of shade to it. I don't think that would be a tweet that you would post if you willingly wanted to be on the sidelines or you were looking for another team. That sounds like, to me, to me, that sounds like a tweet you write when you were forced to be on the bench. That's just my opinion. Sounds like I'm upset at this decision and I'm lashing out.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty obvious to me. I don't think that it's much else than that.
Let's look at it from Tristan's point of view then. I mean, this is unfortunate because this kid has a lot of promise. He shows a lot at the college level, and now he gets his big break, right? Like he gets to play in the RLCS, like he gets to play in these tournaments, but then there's this cloud hanging over him. It's unfortunate, and I feel like now it's going to be even more difficult for him to be able to prove himself with this storyline.
This is such a different situation for Tristan to be in as well, because on Akron, they were the undisputed best team in the East in Collegiate Rocket League. And I've watched Tristan play a lot, and he is a stellar player, especially in the context of CRL. He's one of the best. As far as what he can do at the pro level, I know Akron as a team in the offseason were posting some decent results against other bubble teams. Nothing too crazy from Akron, but Tristan is a part of that. So I don't know how Tristan's going to, I don't know what his mindset is. All I know is that Tristan, he's very cool. He's a very level-headed guy. And I know that he doesn't like to put a lot of pressure on himself. This is a lot of external pressure, and I don't know how much that affects Tristan. When I watch him play on stage at a LAN with hundreds of screaming fans 10 feet away from him, the dude is still cracking flip resets out like it's his hobby. I don't know. He plays a lot of Rocket League, I guess. But you know, when you had something churning and then your brain dies, so you just come up with
just like the worst possible moment. It's okay. We'll give you a pass. I mean, we're not going to delete it from the VOD, but you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so overall, to tie a bow on the eUnited conversation, do you believe that how long will it take for this team to bounce back, in your opinion?
Oh man, like I said, I think United are going to get worse after this. Tristan doesn't have any consistent RLCS experience, and I love Tristan. I love him as a person and a player, but this is completely untested waters with a team. How much playing time, how much scrim time has Tristan got with Wanda Mike and Ajax? Ajax plays in CRL, but does he play with Tristan at all? Like, how much play time have these guys had? I don't know, and it's hard to say. Maybe there's a honeymoon period. Maybe eUnited pop off with Tristan. This is the season for players to come out of nowhere and make a statement. So if there was ever going to be a time that it could happen, it's now, but I don't have anything in front of me that suggests that's going to happen. I only see it getting worse because Hockser wasn't the problem on the field. It makes me mad, Arda. This kind of stuff makes me mad. And it's purely because I don't have the information of whatever other reason they benched Hockser. But if it was for performance, that's crap, man. That's absolute crap. Like, that is not how you, it's just the wrong decision. It's straight up the wrong decision. I said it.
It can't be performance.
It can't be.
Not player. How could it be? Can you even imagine a world where this would somehow, like, could you put your thoughts into the mind of a coach and say, and envision how even somebody would come to the conclusion that this could be performance based?
I want to know what the process is for how they came to that decision to say, because I don't know who, like, I don't know if it is performance based. I don't know who makes those decisions over at eUnited. But like I said, just from the microcosm I got from the 3 or 4 matches that I watched from both regionals, I didn't see anything from Hockser individually where he was consistently the issue. In fact, he was helping them most of the time and getting them out of really tough situations that they were in. Half the reason they played Space Station so close is because Hockser played so well. That's what infuriates me, is when a player plays so well and then they seemingly are getting benched because they're playing, because the perception is that he's playing poorly. I just don't see that, and which is why, again, we go back for the 10th time and say it has to be something else.
Well, I'd like to hear from Chad on this topic. Let us know why you think Hockser got benched. Give us your theories, give us your thoughts. Whether you actually believe them or not, I'm sure you're going to get very creative in chat. But let us know, why did Hockser get benched? Answer that question in the chat. And while you do that, we're actually going to go to an interview right now. Our boy Sleegi has been recording interviews for Behind the Wheel. Y'all have been loving it, so we're going to keep bringing them to you. From a team that did not perform well in the regionals in eUnited to a team that did, the Peeps, they actually went perfect in their latest regional run in Stage A. And Gyro will be standing by with Sleegi. We're going to take you to that interview right now.
How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to yet another interview. My name is Sleegi with ESPN Esports, and today I am pleased to be sitting down with Gyro of the Peeps. And, before we get everything today, Gyro, I just want to say thanks for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be invited.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on. And, just to get things started, I wanted to kind of start off by getting your thoughts on this new format. It seems like a lot of players, in general have been liking the feel of everything, but maybe some of them not liking as much having to play against the lower skilled teams. And I was curious as to what sort of your thoughts are on that.
For the new format, I think most of the players like how the format is because everyone wants to play more Rocket League. I don't think anyone really cares who they play against, but for us personally, we like it a lot because we're really good against the bubble teams, so we usually don't drop games to them. I think we're like 16-1 against every team that's not top 4 right now, so it's really fun to play against a lot of bubble teams, but the upsets are the only thing that would make us think otherwise, I think.
Yeah, I can definitely understand sort of an upset coming through, maybe ruining your mojo a little bit. But no, I mean, you guys have been doing extremely well so far, but you guys have also been playing a lot, especially the Peeps. I mean, the regionals and the grid, but then also you guys competing in the field and the Astro tournaments. And, I was curious, like, do you ever get worried about getting burned out with the volume of Rocket League you're playing, or is that not really something you think you have to worry about?
I think for regionals and grid, we're not really worried because that's like RLCS every week. The field, we only play that once a week as well, so we don't really burn ourselves out since we have to play scrims every day anyways. Most of us just want to keep playing like competitive and just at the top level because that's the only thing that makes us want to keep playing. So, no, I don't think we get burned out. I think the more games, the better, honestly, because if we play less, we're going to get more bored of the game.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. 'Cause the more games you play, sort of the sharper edge, I guess you're sort of able to maintain. And, speaking of that sharper edge, you and AJ obviously have been playing together for a while. But, I was also curious as to how has Illusion fit in with you guys overall since his essentially being added to the team?
Oh, I love playing with Illusion. He's really easy to play with. Like, he just fits rotation. He gets a demo when he needs to. Me and AJ, we've only been team for like a few months. It's been like 6 months, I think. But I think I understand how he plays and he understands how I play. So we all have pretty good rotations from the beginning. And Alu's just like an easy person to play with. So I think we could all just ape around the field and still do good.
No, I think that's actually really helpful as well because, sometimes you have teams where everyone plays well and maybe the morale's not quite as there, but it really sounds like you guys also just get together well as well.
Yeah, I mean, Alu's like the more mature one on the team. He's the oldest one on the team, and I think we really needed some maturity since me and AJ are really dumb. So we needed someone to calm us down and get us more focused on the game, I think.
Well, I mean, I think that's been working out so far. You guys have been seeing a whole lot of success. I mean, you make it all the way to the semifinals in the first regional. You go 3-0 in stage 1 of this recent regional. And, with all of that success, what are you doing personally to make sure that you're able to maintain this momentum that you guys have been able to already build up to this point?
I think the main thing is to keep doing what we're doing. To keep talking to each other whenever we're making mistakes and being honest with each other. Playing pretty much every single day, scrimming every day. I feel like whenever we take breaks, it's a bit harder to go back to how we were with momentum-wise. So, yeah, I think this next regional, stage 2, I think it's going to be a bit tough because we went 3-0, but every other team went 3-1. So we're probably going to play like an SSG or something round 2, but I hope our momentum could keep us through it.
Well, I mean, one of the big things, though, with the Peeps, right, is, when you get into those situations where, I'm not going to say necessarily people anticipate you losing, but you're playing against a team where maybe the crowd will see one as more favorable. You guys end up tending to pull it off. Is that something that you sort of feed off of, or is it just you go into each match sort of with the same mentality of you're just going to have to try and win, or do you enjoy playing those teams where potentially you are the upset if you can come away with the win?
I mean, I think it's really nice being the underdog because there's less pressure. But at the same time, I feel like we just don't really pay attention to that as much because we know how good we are in comparison to other teams, and we know what teams we can beat, and we know like game planning, how it's going to go. But I think from the outside perspective, everyone just thinks like G2 versus Peeps, like instant win for G2 or something like that. So, I mean, I guess it's fun beating them and then seeing everyone just go like, wow, they just beat them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the birth of don't sleep on the Peeps as well, right? Like I've every time I see, whether it be the analysts or the chat or whatever, being like, oh yeah, the Peeps don't have them. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would say that. You might be putting yourself in a bad situation. But, with all the success that you guys have been seeing, obviously it's been in a lot of online events up to this point. And, with that, hopefully LANs returning sooner rather than later. But with the eventual return of LANs, is that something that you personally are sort of looking forward to? Or, do you prefer these online events more?
I think me personally, I prefer LAN events because it's just the energy is like a lot higher, and I think I perform like the same on LAN as I do online. I think a lot of players tend to play down when they're on LAN, so I think playing the same as you do online is really good. I can't really talk for AJ or Alu much, but I'm pretty sure they would say that they like LANs too. It's just a lot more fun, and there's a lot more games, and you could talk to everyone else.
Yeah, especially the crowd too. I know it's been one a lot of people mentioned about just feeding on the energy, but final question before I let you go today, but I'm really curious, especially, after the results of this stage 1 of Regional 2 is what are your top 3 teams in the North American region right now?
I feel like people are going to hate me for this, but so it's I guess I have to put SSG as number 1, even though like I feel like Envy is probably like really good, but because they just like destroy us every time we play them. But I think SSG number 1. Team. We're 1-0 in the G2, and then with SSG and Envy we're a losing record. So, yeah.
That's actually really interesting because I kind of agree with you to an extent. I definitely see SSG and Envy as a sort of top 1, top 2 teams. G2 and the Peeps as well, obviously, I'm thinking doing well. But, I kind of want to just follow up real quickly. Where does that sort of put NRG on your sort of list? Because I know a lot of people, generally speaking, are continually putting them in the top 3. But, with the way their results have been, where does that place NRG in your mind?
I mean, it's kind of weird to say because it's NRG. It sounds weird saying like NRG is not in the top 3, but I think they go at number 5 right now because we beat them in the last grid, and then after beating them, they played like Sonics, Alpine, PK, and they made it to the finals and got 2nd place. Whereas if we beat them, we probably would have been there. So I think they go 5th here, but I think they could definitely turn it around because they like 4-0 swept everyone when they first formed.
Yeah, they've had a lot of up and down results, whether like kind of looking at the grid, but then back to the regional. So I think I actually kind of agree with you. It's not as much of a hot take, but we'll see what everyone else thinks. But, interesting insight. It's always really curious for me to hear what sort of the professional players' thoughts are, because, you always hear everything coming from the analysts. You always see everything on Twitter and Reddit, but it's kind of hearing that come from you and placing G2 at that spot is really interesting for me. But again, I appreciate you sitting down with me today and answering any questions. And was there anything else you wanted to add before we cut it off?
Illusion is nuts, and Moopy sucks. That's it.
All right, well, you heard it here first, everybody. We'll see if the Peeps can continue their ways later this weekend. They got the grid and then also stage 2 of the regional. It's going to be a really interesting time, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the split. But thank you again for sitting down with me, Gyro. And this has been another interview on ESPN Esports. If you want to see more, or you have ideas of questions or professionals or whoever you would like to see or whatever you would want to hear them answer, let us know. We always take a look. But that's going to do it for us this time. Until the next one, y'all have a good one.
Shout out to our man Sleegi giving us great weekly interviews. The full uninterrupted audio VOD will be available on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports. At the conclusion of this program, in case you missed it, the top 5 that Gyro was talking about was Space Station at number 1, Envy at number 2, 3 and 4 he couldn't decide between G2 and the Peeps, so he just kind of clumped them together, and then NRG at number 5. So that is Gyro's top 5. Why don't we get to Jorby's top 5? So now we're going to get to Jorby's top 5 in both NA and EU. And since Gyro did NA for us, Jorby, why don't we just continue on the NA train and go top 5? We're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to reveal now your power rankings of NA teams as we stand here today, September the 14th.
Ooh,
Let's go. Number 5.
Gyro's not going to like this.
Is it much different?
Well, it's a little different, but it's all the teams are there. It's just a little different. But yeah, my number 5 team is the Peeps. And Gyro, you make a great argument, my friend. Also, your hair is looking fantastic. I love it, okay? But here's the thing, is yes, you've beat NRG twice in the grid. You're 2-1 against NRG. However, And you're also 13-1 against the rest of the field that aren't top 4 teams. But you are 2-4 against those top 4 teams. You beat G2 and NRG. Look, here's what I'm saying here, Gyro. You got to beat them in the regionals. This is why I didn't put you above NRG just yet. Because the grid, that's great. And you guys look fantastic. I absolutely love this Peeps team. They seemingly came out of nowhere when the season started because the offseason wasn't really, it was up and down and really just a little sparse. But like they've come on so hot now and they just don't drop games to these lower level teams. That's why I had last week, I elevated them above Rogue. I mean, Rogue have fallen off real far, but I elevated them above Rogue. And I would say it would probably be almost tied, but I want to see them beat NRG in the regional, the peak of the online competition before I make the jump. I'm scared. I'm scared to make the jump. I'll admit I got cold feet. So nothing against you guys, but you're right. Yeah, you got 3-0 against them. You're right. I'm sorry, Gyro. Only this time.
Tryhouse is in the chat. What's up, Tryhouse? He has a good point. He says the Peeps are the dark horse of NA right now. They could beat any top team any moment. And that's a dangerous situation to be in. When you have that perception that maybe you won't win maybe it's like a volatility, maybe not consistency, but like your highs are very high, your lows are very low. But if you have that stigma that you can beat any team at any time, in any given series, that's dangerous for any top team.
I totally agree. And I absolutely agree that they could take on Space Station any day of the week. Reddles said it himself that he is absolutely terrified of the Peeps because they are that team. I wouldn't even say they're a dark horse. I'd say that they're a competitor. They're straight up competing for that top spot. You have to include the Peeps in that conversation now. But I think the next conversation is finding consistency against the rest of the top 4. Finish off NRG in the regional and then start stacking wins against Envy and Space Station. That's a tall order, but I think the Peeps, if anyone can come out of the bottom or outside of the top 4 to come in, the Peeps are the team that can and probably will do it.
Well, they've had impressive results, at least most recently, semifinals in the regional number 1, quarters in grid week 6, and also week 5 and 3. So the grid is sort of where they not necessarily perform as well as they would like to, but certainly with that being every single week, we could certainly see some better results from the Peeps. I should have asked you this actually before we put together the top 5, because this answer differs across analysts that put together power rankings for us. How much do you value the grid in your power rankings?
I think the grid can be indicative of how a team is going to perform going into the weekend, but I think those indications are more for your Kansas City Pioneers type teams. I know that some of the grid weeks, especially recently, have been very competitive, and the playoff portion of the grid has been pretty intense Rocket League. Envy has gone pretty deep in almost every grid, and anytime we get to the playoffs, the game is so fast, and it almost feels like it's a regional. But I don't put as much stock in it because the top teams just play, they perform a bit differently when it comes to the regional. So I like to use it as, is there a trend? Is there a team that we should be looking out for? Is there a player specifically that is popping off for a team? Because consistency is the hardest thing to achieve in Rocket League. And the grid can be a path to consistency, but it's not necessarily indicative that you're going to find it. So I think the grid matters, but probably not as much as some people might think.
Let's go to your number 4. So you got Peeps at number 5. Number 4 is?
Number 4 is NRG. And I fought
may or may not
NRG
have been spoiled there, but that's okay.
Peeps.
We're going to move on.
I'm sorry. But I will say, I won't spoil anymore, Arda. You know what? You can reveal it. You reveal it. I'm not going to say a word. But NRG, I debated for a while just putting that they were both tied, and I couldn't decide. But after NRG's very clean performance over the weekend, I don't know. It's hard for me to pick against NRG, and it's the tenure, it's the roster, and it's how they performed. I'm worried about NRG though. I am. They can quickly fall off this list. They can be out as soon as next weekend if they're not careful, because I feel as if that whenever they play against other top teams, they struggle. I don't know what it is when they play against Peeps, Envy, G2, but they tend to drop games that they shouldn't, and they don't look like the NRG we expected them to look like with Squishy Muffins on this team. But sometimes it feels like they're disjointed, like they don't have a lot of intentionality moving down the field, and maybe that's due to a change up in play style. Maybe they're still really getting used to how each other play in many different types of situations, because every team gives you a different look. Not every team plays you the same, so you're not going to approach every single game the same. And how your teammates react in certain situations, well, it's a lot different when you've changed 33% of your roster. Even though Garrett and Justin have played a ton with Squishy outside of the competitive space, this is the first season that they actually are playing at a 100% competitive seriousness, and it's different. That's just a different vibe. It's different in comms, and unless you're absolutely slapping the team that you're playing, you're typically pretty serious for the most part, and you're focused, and it's different. So I don't know what is happening with NRG. They struggle against the top. They don't have any problem with most of the teams outside of the top 5 or 6. They're kind of level right now for me, but I expected them to be Space Station at the start of the season. On paper, they were supposed to be as good as Space Station, but they haven't been. So this is what we got. Next week, if they can't convince me, then Peeps will definitely skyrocket over them and maybe G2. I don't know.
They've had a weird season in the sense that, like you said, they've struggled against Space Station. They've been eliminated from many tournaments this season. In fact, I think it was 3 consecutive grids that Space Station eliminated them from contention. They haven't placed first in a Season X event. They've come in second 3 times. They've made the semifinals another 3 times, but they haven't won anything this season.
Yeah.
So how much of the mystique or the past result, that can't matter much anymore, right? We're far enough in the season that we have to start saying NRG are having these placements, but they're not winning. So there's teams that are primed to leapfrog them.
Well, that's the confusing part for me, because when I watch them play against Envy, and chat's kind of talking about it a little bit, is, when they play against Envy, they're inconsistent. Sometimes they actually find a rhythm, and Envy are the ones reacting to everything NRG are doing. But Envy somehow come out of that scrappy and end up winning. Now, they're almost even. Envy only have one more match win against them if you include Grid and the regionals. The point is that they haven't looked oppressive. They haven't looked scary, like NRG scary. It's that eye test. But then you watch them play against the 7th, 8th, 9th seeded teams, and they're crushing them. They're absolutely destroying them where other teams aren't. So something isn't clicking against these top teams. Something isn't. They aren't figuring it out. And I still believe in this NRG roster. I don't think it's been long enough that we can really count them out. But like I said, I think stage 2 and the playoffs next weekend is going to seal what NRG's fate is to me as a team. Are they a top 4 team, or are they just kind of meddling around here in between the top 4 and 5 and the rest of the field?
Well, let's find out who's in your top 3 right now. Who's number 3?
Number 3, that would definitely be Envy. And this one I also had some difficulty choosing between Envy because they've been performing really well. I did put them a slot right below G2 thanks to G2's performance. It wasn't just that they beat Envy, but
then they spoil your own list there? Is that what you just did?
No. No one knows what's coming next. No one. Absolutely
you literally
not.
Just said I put them a spot below G2.
Did I say that?
Maybe. Pretty
I
certain
have to go back
did.
and watch the VOD to find out.
Maybe you didn't. This is where we get the Men in Black memory eraser, and that's all. Anyway,
yeah.
Go on, please go on.
The magnetizer on the hard drive, but no, Envy have really impressed me from when I started following them in week 1 of the grid. Whole way up until this point, they've really evolved and improved as a roster. In week 1 grid and even week 2 grid, they had some issues on defense where they were double committing in situations where they didn't need to. But then week 3 came along and there was zero issues on this team. Their comms are some of the most calm comms I've ever heard in my life. Nobody goes above 2 decibels. Everyone's like this. They're like, go. Okay. I got it. Okay, he's there. And then Mist will crack like some kind of a joke about the other team. Like, he missed. He sucks. And it's like, whoa. But other than that, they're just super quiet and they don't panic ever. This is the most non-panicking team I've ever seen, probably apart from Space Station. Their Turbo Pulsa is so good, it's stupid. It's actually stupid how good Turbo has been. His ability to position and then to win challenges. The dude doesn't know how to lose challenges 90% of the time, and it makes playing against him really frustrating because one of the ways he's so successful is he blindside challenging more than any other player that I've seen, where if he's rotating back, he's just going to cut in, take the ball away from the lead guy on the other team, and Mist and Atomic are ready for it. They know exactly what's happening. Everybody's communicating, and they're always positioned for it. The only way you get by this Envy team is if you're physical, if you can take them off the field or harry their rotations so that they're slowed down. Otherwise, you have Atomic. I mean, you saw the goal from Atomic earlier. He's just carrying it in front. He has that kind of respect, but he's developed into an insane passer for this team. Atomic's mechanical ability goes without question, but how he's morphed, he has two of the most reliable rotators in Mist and Turbo Pulsa. If Atomic is behind the ball as first man, Turbo or Mist are going to be ready for it every single time. I don't see more than one or two teams that are as fluid as Envy right now. The only team that they really, really struggle against is Space Station, and I tell you, I get super Envy Homer when I'm on the grid, and it's really frustrating to watch us constantly lose to Space Station. We're gonna beat them one day, but I don't know. That's why they're number 3.
Must be fun to do those streams though, like to be a completely biased commentator by design, because normally you have to play it down the middle when you're on like the quote unquote national stream or the regional broadcasts. But on the grid, you're working for Envy, so you can be as biased as you want. It must be a lot of fun as a commentator.
It's a lot of fun. It's definitely a much looser atmosphere, and I definitely enjoy that. And it's also fun because my focus is less on everyone on the pitch and trying to monitor where both teams are, but focusing on Envy and being able to put my sole focus on what they're doing has given me such a greater insight into them as a team. And you really get an idea of how they play and what their tendencies are as a unit and individually. I think that's a real benefit to being able to cast a team and watch their run throughout an entire tournament rather than only getting to see them like once or twice a week.
Yeah, speaking of fun vibes on their grid casts, let's get to your number 2. Who do you have there? Gee,
Well,
I
number
wonder.
2, who could it be? It's not SSG, so that means that it's the Kansas City Pioneers. Just kidding.
Oh, wow, let's go. Big day for Kansas City. You get one big run, one big weekend, and you vault up to number 2.
Yeah, I don't put Peeps above NRG despite being 2-1 in matches against them, but I'll put Kansas City at the top. No, G2 are my number 2, and I have to say they impressed me during the grid, and they also scared me for a little bit this weekend because, well, a couple other teams got in the way. The Pioneers being one of them, but they also struggled against version 1. And this could be a little bit of G2 not playing well against version 1 and a little bit of version 1 just playing well against G2. I think you have data that would suggest both could be true. However, G2, you guys said it, the air conditioning buff, it's OP. And I still think that he's the key to this G2 roster. Because if Chicago is on point, they're nigh unstoppable. That's the only time they beat Space Station is when Chicago is sinking balls into the net, or when he's just being such a nuisance with harassing the goal line or just taking away all of your boost. When he's in that flow and he's making every single optimal decision, he's so fast and so mechanically good that it's so frustrating to play against G2 on defense because they don't seem to rotate past the attacking third when they're feeling that rhythm.
Let's just go through. I have a question about your number 2 and number 1 on the list here. So why don't we just reveal who your top team is? Boy, drum roll. Hold on. Big surprise here, okay?
Oh.
And
yeah.
why? Go ahead, please.
Space Station?
Is that who it is? Oh, man, what a shock.
Space Station?
No,
Gaming?
you went
Mission
there.
Control? Hello, Reddles,
Unbelievable.
Typical?
Unbelievable. Wow.
Arsenal. You know how Chrome said last week that he was really impressed with how Arsenal has been improving?
Yeah.
He's not wrong. Did you watch Space Station when they didn't play the Pioneers? Because Arsenal's insane. I remember, I don't remember what game I casted this past weekend with them, but I remember watching Arsenal grab the ball in his own corner, and then he boosts up the side. He boosts towards the middle of the field, then immediately boosts back up the side wall, and he just looks like this sinuous supersonic curve. Where's he gonna go with the ball? I have no clue. This is the most unreadable team in North America. They're so good at mixing it up and beating you 30 different ways. I can't put G2 above Space Station until I see them beat them more than one time in a row. Because Space Station, when they lose, they always recover. Every single time. They are the most resilient team that I think we've ever seen in North America. They're so fast. Reddles was the perfect addition to this roster. He fits the philosophy that Sypical and Arsenal want so well. He wants to harass the goal line. He wants to slow it down. Reddles has gotten so good, and he was already a top 5 talent before he entered Space Station. And to me, it just solidified why people thought he was a top 5 talent in North America. To me, Space Station are still the undisputed number 1 until somebody else wins the regional. If someone can take that crown from Space Station, then I'm willing to have a conversation about how they might not be number 1. But it's no contest. Chrome's Space Station Gaming are number 1, and I'm not hearing any arguments against it.
Excellent points. Question for you, following up on everything you mentioned there.
I'll hear your arguments against it.
No, there are no arguments against it. What I want to know, though, is G2, other than this being a regional, which might be, if this exact path happened in a regional, I don't know if it would have still been enough to knock down Space Station and put G2 at number 1, but maybe the gap would have been a lot shorter. What I want to know, though, is how big is the gap right now between Space Station and G2? At one point, Space Station looked like they were locked in number 1 for the foreseeable future. But now G2 have not only defeated them, but had this incredibly impressive run in the grid. And they beat other top 5 teams in order to do it. So what I want to know is, how far apart are your top position and runner-up position right now on your power rankings?
The distance is smaller than you might think. I think G2 being together and being consistent is very scary. And I think if any team are going to contend with Space Station, well, G2 just beat them in the grid. I think they're probably the most well-equipped team outside of Envy to do it. And it's going to be tough, but the gap isn't that big. I think if G2 and Space Station played each other 100 times, it might be 41 or 49-51. That's how I feel, but obviously we have to see them play. And I'm not going to say anything until I watch them play on the pitch, see how they look, and then make that determination. But I can tell you that it's about 3 index fingers worth of space between Space Station and G2. It's not that big.
So Jorby's top 5 as a recap: number 5, Peeps; number 4, NRG; number 3, Team Envy. The Post Malone buff is real, folks. Number 2, G2; and number 1, Space Station Gaming. Now let's move across the pond and talk about Europe. Let's get to your top 5 teams in EU. Number 5.
Number 5 could be the 5th seeded team in Europe or the 40th seeded team in Europe, because that's just how Europe is these days. Anybody who tries to rank these teams, they make their lives miserable for a couple of hours, because outside of BDS, Blokes, Giants, Vitality, and a couple of others, who do you pick? No, Dignitas. I don't know what happened to Dignitas, but they're not on that list. So I went with Fadeaway. And Fadeaway is a team that, it's funny. People say like, oh, it's the Veloce play style. Well, actually, it turns out it's apparently the Freaky play style, which is, that not reactionary. I think that's the wrong way to characterize how Fadeaway play Rocket League. It's more so let the other team make mistakes, trap the ball, and then punish on counterattacks. The consistency with which they are successful with this, I've said for multiple seasons with Freaky that he can't keep getting away with it, but he keeps getting away with it. And I look at the other teams in Europe along this line, and you can make an argument one way or the other, but Fadeaway's name keeps coming back up for a team that's consistently taking matches off of every team below them. And so it's hard for me to pick against them for this spot. They're a pretty solid team. Like I look at Fadeaway, and that's a team you can't sleep on at any point, because the second you get lax against them on the pitch, they somehow find a way to get the ball into your net. And it's something that's actually really impressed me with Fadeaway. I think that play style, they have the ability to evolve, and they've shown that they can play aggressively when they need to. But I think that they need to find that more often. They need to switch to that more often. I think if Fadeaway can start implementing more mix-ups in how they approach the game, they can really help keep teams on their toes whenever you see them behind the ball.
So that's a very interesting pick, right?
Yeah.
I don't think, especially people that pay more attention to the grid than anything else, having Fadeaway in the top 5 is a very, very interesting pick. So
yeah, I know that Fadeaway would be a bit controversial because Guild isn't on the list, or even Barca, but I haven't seen enough out of Guild or Barca. They've been too inconsistent for my taste to have them in the 5 spot, but I think they certainly contend for it. That's why I went with Fadeaway, because I feel like Fadeaway has been the more consistent out of those 3 teams.
would you say that, and not to be too much of a spoiler here, there are definitely some top tier organizations that are not in your top 5. So
Yeah.
would you say that this is more because Fadeaway is overtly impressive, or is it because these other teams, like you mentioned, the teams that you mentioned, like Dignitas, Barcelona, even Team Liquid, etc., that they are not impressing enough? Or both?
Not impressing enough, maybe. It's like, it feels like they hang on in a lot of games, especially against top teams. Like they're hanging on. Okay, they forced a game 4. Okay, they forced game 5, but then they either can't close it out against top teams, or it's still a struggle to end up coming away the victor in those games. But I also think that it's tough for top orgs to make it into this list right now in Europe for 2 reasons. And I see it as Europe went through a phase where all of their top talent got spread out. And whether it was them going to join their own, start their own teams, or join another pre-existing one with players that don't have as much RLCS experience, Europe spread out their talent. And that's part of the reason why the inconsistency quote has been the way it is. And that's also why you see teams like Team BDS come up and make a huge splash. These are European players who have been knocking at the door for a long time. And people tuned in to the European scene know all of these players' names. And so it's less of a surprise, a little less of a surprise to them that these up-and-coming teams are doing so well. But it's still a surprise to watch incumbents fall as far as they have in Europe.
Yeah, like you said, that 5 to 8 positioning is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on, because we could do power rankings with many different people. Even if you were to come on every week and give us a top 5, that number 5 position could change every single week, just based on, you know what I mean? It's so tight between 4 or 5 or even 6 teams really battling for that number 5 position. But 1 through 4 may be a little bit more certain, at least in terms of which teams are involved. Now let's get to the ordering. Who do you have at number 4?
So number 4, I'll say this on the top 3, 4, or 2, 3, and 4 were really hard for me to decide. But the 4th spot, I'm gonna go with Top Blokes. So Top Blokes have gone recently. They've posted a lot of great results, and they've been one of those up and coming teams that have started to slowly post better and better results against really tough teams. They still struggle sometimes against your Giants, your BDS, your Renault Vitalities, but they're also winning these matches. They're trading a lot more. This is one of those teams where that expectation is on me now. Like, I think that they are a top 4 team in Europe. They've certainly played like it for the last couple of weeks. Eventually, you got to say enough is enough. You can't stop doubting this team. You can't have them outside of this top 5 anymore. The top blokes are here to stay. This is such a solid team, and to me, it makes me happy because I've watched Flame and Casio struggle for a while, whether it was on Triple Trouble, on Veloce, or like the whole way back on Team Secret, Flame's first appearance in, I think it was season 3 of RLCS. And I always loved Flame as a player. I really enjoyed Casio as well. Those two have become so much more prominent on a roster that features Archie, an up-and-coming player who is definitely their splash player, but it's also opened up Flame and Casio's game so much more. Casio's one of the best passers in EU. And at the end of the last regional, I was saying, I'm not sure if there's anyone better than Casio at passing the ball in Europe. So absolutely the top blokes get my number 4 spot.
Do you think they stay top blokes much longer? I mean, in name. Does an org sweep them up at some point?
I hope so. I hope an org picks them up. They deserve to be picked up. There are a couple teams that I'm hoping orgs pick up that have been performing well for a while. But I imagine if they post solid results again in Grid, if they aren't in org talks already, they'll start then. That's for sure.
Who's at number 3? Who's in the middle of your list?
It's Vitality. And this Vitality is the toughest team for me to figure out because in the same line of Dignitas, when Vitality and Dignitas were considered the 2 best teams in Europe not that long ago, I have this expectation for Vitality, a Space Station-like expectation. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong that I'm doing that. But to me, this roster has proven time and again that they deserve to have that expectation put upon them. I mean, have you seen Alpha 54 play? And against one of the best players to ever grace the field of Rocket League in KDOP and Fairy Peak? I honestly, they just haven't posted the results. New teams have gotten in this team's way. BDS, the Giants, the top blokes. These teams are trading off of each other constantly. But Vitality, they've been on the losing end of that more than they've been on the winning end of it. It hasn't been by a high margin, a very slight margin. But other teams have been performing so well that Vitality just moved down on the list by principle because other teams moved up.
Any concern whatsoever that Vitality missed the playoffs in week 6 of the Grid?
I don't think there's a concern yet. I think if there's multiple weeks, for me, it's once is an anomaly. Twice, that's a pattern. 3 times is a trend. I kind of go by that rule whenever I'm watching Rocket League teams play. And that's my rule for Vitality. NRG at the very beginning of the Grid season, they lost to Sonics. I think it was 3-0. They got swept by the Sonics, which was, I don't know how that happened. But Vitality, they're afforded one miscue on a Grid week before I'm hitting the alarm button going, what's going on with this team?
Yeah, Scrumptious Biscuits, very good point in chat. They did win the previous week's Grid. They also won in week 3, and they were in the semifinals in regional number 2. So I was just curious because when you look back on it, especially Vitality, a team of that pedigree, it would just be a very uncharacteristic result for them to have, to miss a playoff in any tournament that they participate in. So I guess I'll ask you again, Jorby, if it happens the second and third time, and then we'll notice if that ever does become a trend.
I'll definitely think about hitting the panic button if they don't make playoffs next week.
Fair enough.
I'll think about it.
Speaking of teams that are habitually in the playoffs of any major EU tournament, let's get to your runner-up.
Yeah, so my runner-up, it has to be the Vodafone Giants. This is one of those up-and-coming teams that have taken Europe by storm. One of the fastest teams in the region, and they deserve every bit of credit that they've gotten. Their results that they've posted lately, they've been awesome. This team came, for me, the Vodafone Giants, I know that there are some Giants fans out there that I always knew I always knew that they were going to be so good. I always knew they'd contend with BDS. No, you didn't. No, you did not know that at all. How could you even say that? But I love it. I love the passion. Our European fans, I think they get attached to all of their teams, orgless or organized, if you will. No matter what, they just seem to be so passionate about it. But Zamway, Tox, and Stake, like Stake especially, has been impressive to me. And I know a lot of the spotlight has more so been on Tox and Zamway, but Stake has kind of been the player that does a lot of the, not cleanup, but a lot of the dirty work. Sometimes he scores, but most of the time you see Zamway or Tox behind that goal scoring mechanism of the Giants. And they play a very, dare I say it, North American style of play where they're aggressive, they're in your face, they're going to challenge you in the attacking third, they're going to dominate you in midfield, and they're going to force you to try to find a gap against their fast pace. And not a lot of teams have been able to do it. The only teams that can are those who can match them in speed. And there's only one other team who can consistently do that, Art.
And that possibly might be the team that we talk about next.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up the fact that Giants also missed out on the playoffs in week 6, but I have a feeling that
That's
your
baby.
response to that is exactly what you said about Vitality.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. And that's Europe, baby. You can't take any one tournament and be like, oh, I guess this team sucks now, because Europe will always surprise you the next week with that team recovering. So they're always keeping you on your toes. They're like, what do you mean European power rankings? Everybody's powerful. You can't pick.
Everybody is ranked number 1 at some point
If
in the season.
everybody's powerful, nobody's powerful.
They're all powerful. They came in second in the second regional as well. So not too much concern about missing out on the grid week 6, but let's no longer focus on teams that missed the playoffs in week 6 and talk about a team that did very well in the grid week 6. Your number 1 team in the power rankings in EU this week is...
The number 1 team is the 2-time back-to-back regional champions and your grid winner of the last week. That is none other than Team BDS. This team, there's no other way to say it. As far as RLCS is concerned, they came out of absolutely nowhere. To go in the first regional and to win it, not just get better. It's like, yeah, they were in the rival series and people were like, BDS could definitely contend. It's still so mightily impressive that they went and smacked everybody in the first regional, consistently placed well in the playoffs during the grid, and then went and won the whole regional again. I was like, they really did it again? And their biggest tests, Vitality and the Giants, they were not enough to take this giant down. Like, I want to see BDS versus Space Station so badly. This team is so good. I love watching them play. Anytime I know BDS is playing in the grid, or if I'm not casting them in the regional, I'm making sure that I have that tuned in, the volume up all the way, because I get so in to every series they play in. They're so fun to watch. They're ridiculous. Extra had a season with iUnite and Tigray, and he didn't really have the best performance in his inauguration in the RLCS. But then he's like, yo, Monkey Moon, marked by 8. You guys are sick. I played with you guys way more often in the bubble. I'm going to queue with you guys, and we're going to win. And guess what? They have. Extra is ridiculous. Monkey Moon is ridiculous. And Marked by 8 never loses challenges. So I can't say that any team is better, because no team has won more than they have this season.
They look ridiculous. Marked by 8 seems to be like, every time I watch him play, I'm like, how did he do that? He seems to be in the right positions all the time. Like, he's just incredible, and it seems to be getting better every week.
Yeah, it impresses me so much to watch these new players constantly make that happen. But I think, some pros have talked about this too, Arda, where some top teams or teams that were in European RLCS, they got lax or complacent and maybe didn't put in as much work as a lot of these previously known bubble teams were putting in. And now we see this clash of play styles happening where some teams are adapting, but other teams have completely fallen off and don't seem to have an answer for what's not working on their teams anymore. All these new rosters have come up and completely shaken up the formula for how to be successful in Europe. There's so much new talent developing, and it's the most exciting time to be an up-and-coming player in Rocket League. If you're a bubble player, or if you're skirting the edges of being competitive, you're playing with a team, there's literally no better time in Rocket League history than right now to make a name for yourself. And that's what so many players are doing. It's Mark by 8 is the picture perfect example of that. I don't have anything more to say about it, man. BDS are sick.
In the chat, Smogger77, going back to what you were saying about, I wish we could see BDS taking on Space Station in, a fictional world situation. He says worlds are so missed with both regional shakeups. I will say this, and this doesn't just stay at Rocket League, obviously. This is all of esports, but one positive consequence of social distancing and having leagues online is that we are forced to let these storylines percolate, which in a way is a very good thing, because by the time we get to a situation where it's safe enough to do LAN and we get to see those matchups, we will have starved for them by that point. Yeah, right? That next Worlds for Rocket League, the next World Championship is going to pop off.
Oh man, I'm dreaming. I miss LAN so much, dude. I've been thinking about how long it's been since I casted a LAN, and it's been almost a year now, I think. And I'm hurting. That's my zone, man. That's my element. To be at either the World Championship, any LAN event, that's where I feel the most comfortable. Casting at home has been, dare I say, a luxury, and it's been nice. However, I do my best when I'm with somebody else and when someone else is next to me where I can bounce my energy off of. So I definitely missed that. But I agree with you. And I actually had this conversation yesterday talking about how many matches there are in Rocket League right now and everything being online. Some people worried about the stakes not mattering that much, but I think it makes the stakes that much more palpable and massive when we, like you said, when we finally do get to the World Championship, because we've had so much to digest, to consume, that the storylines do develop themselves, and we're not trying to force a narrative or force a certain talking point. They come out naturally based on how these teams are performing, from the rise and the falls and the consistency, the what have you. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement. But can we get there? Can we get there after a while? I'm ready.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Here's hoping sooner than later when safe enough to do so. Here's your top 5 in case you missed it. Number 5, Fadeaway. Number 4, Top Blokes. 3, Vitality. 2, Giants. And 1, BDS. Don't forget, we do a top 5 Europe and top 5 NA every single week here on Behind the Wheel. And we also take a lot of your suggestions, so feel free to continuously tell us what you would like to see from this show, whether it's on Reddit or on Twitter at ESPN_esports. Right now, I'd like for you to put some questions in the chat if you feel like we didn't address anything, or you'd like to hear more about a particular topic that we did discuss. Anything Rocket League, Jorby will be happy to answer your questions right after we show you our top 10 plays of the week. Here they are.
Gimmick looking for the double tap, couldn't fit it in. Wow. I mean, you can't blame Gimmick for not scoring that. That's a tough shot for anyone to nail. First killer hits them with the changeup, got in front of it, gives it the little kiss with the wheels, and we'll see you later, Gimmick. What are you going to do? Nothing.
That's my favorite goal of the day by a long shot. That is so cool.
Getting that one goal, but Peeps able to hold on and keep that offense going. Really, Gyro putting a lot of the team on his back as he's doing it again with a double tap off a flip reset. Gyro, you madman, you have got to stop this.
Someone clip it. I'm just going to say it. Someone clip it right now. Someone clip it. Come on.
There's no way to sugarcoat that. How many kickoff goals I've seen them get scored on? Oh, Adam, what a touch!
Hold on. Hold on a second, Jorby. You know who doesn't suck? It's Adam. And what a play here, catching this ball on the opposite side of the field, and then he puts it into net.
It's great if they can have something up their sleeve, and Express opening up the scoreboard will be very good for his team in the second game.
And Express was a powerhouse back in the day, but so's Jules. Jules has been at the top of OCE for a long time, and it's with plays like this, an actual ground pinch here. The last one was more of a half volley, but this one just able to get a change in direction in front of the net that would normally not be possible.
Towards the midfield top floats, surviving for now on this back end.
That's another great. Oh, what a.
Whoa!
50% into scoring. What a save from Casio. It's down the other end. Oh my God!
Oh, how does he do it? He saves it from the goal line on one end. Carries away. Casio pushes this ball.
Later on in the tournament, when they play against the top tier competition, because it's a tough one. Can't decide. That is just beautiful. Though squishy left nothing up to chance by taking freshness out of the play. But would it have mattered? How on earth are you going to save this?
Freshness just... I'm sorry. I'll just apologize for you. I'm sorry you were stuck in that 2v1.
Speed on the ball here. As Flashpoint still fighting. Transition.
Field.
This could be a goal. Oh my goodness! Heck!
Wow!
Unbelievable!
What the heck was this? Off the ceiling, off the backboard, nothing but net.
Okay. Passing, please.
Yes. Yes.
Team sports.
Yes.
Team sports.
Team sports. Yes. Yes.
Let's go.
Yes. This is, listen, G2 has so many good individual plays, but we really shine on the team sports.
We're looking for it. Could be a hot 3-0 today, but with that 1-0 lead, surely we'll be seeing close matchups back and forth. But look, Stax knows what he's talking about, and I do trust his opinion sometimes, but he does say that at the end of the day, freshness, shut up, Spaceman. Tied 1-1.
Ball is still in the air, Spaceman. Lion Blaze drop down. To freshness, they come in clutch, and we got an overtime.
Behind him. Mimic traps it, flicks it to the corner.
Kenobi had to get real creative with that catch there. Went for the quick flick. Didn't quite square it up. And Rogue regained possession. First killer making the defense work. What is this?
No, watch him go up. He's like, okay, we pop it once, and now let's, how do we get this flip reset? It's over here. Yep, there it is. All right, shoot, bam. What are you talking about? That's insane.
The power of the first touch. First killer demonstrating precision, car control, and the ability to command the ball at will.
Our top 10 plays of the week, and by the way, you can contribute to them as well. Use the hashtag BTW Top 10 on Twitter. Tag us as well at ESPN_esports. And if we use one of the clips that you send us, we'll give you credit during the top 10 because everyone loves to see their name on a stream or television or a cast of any kind. People just love themselves is what I'm trying to get at. We certainly do because we're always on the air, Jorby. That's really why we do this.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have a certain level of, exactly. We got a couple questions for you before we move on, or end the show, I should say. Lancer RL wants to talk about version 1. And they are one of the new brands on the scene in Rocket League, of course. They're connected with Wise Ventures, who also own the Minnesota Rocker and Call of Duty League. What's been going wrong for version 1, and do they have any chance of becoming a top 5 team with their current roster?
Man, I don't know what's going on with version 1. I watch this team play, and sometimes they look like they have it figured out, and then every other time they just don't. They don't have it figured out. And in their last how many matches? In the last 8 matches, they have lost 6 of them, and those 6 losses, in order from recent to earliest: Plot Twist 0-3, Rogue 0-3, G2 2-3. eUnited 1-3. They then beat eUnited right after that. This is including Grid and the second regional. Then they lost to the Peeps in 5 games, then lost to the Pittsburgh Knights in 5 games earlier than that. When I watch this team play, sometimes I feel like they've got it figured out, but they can't hold on to the ball. They can't win challenges consistently, and they play way too much defense. Like, I didn't write down the shot differential, but like their shot differential is terrible right now. Like they're not generating any offense whatsoever. And AXB was initially a very solid addition to this team. They were playing a lot of offense. They had really solid rotations, but then as soon as they get locked into this philosophy on defense where they feel so much pressure that they just constantly have to boom the ball away. Or, okay, I'm just going to air dribble and then hopefully we win this 50. If we don't win this 50, okay, everybody rotate back and we're going to try again. It's the chemistry that's an issue for me. The Torment, Gimmick, and AXB don't look like they're on the same page all the time. And that can't happen when you have other teams, like the teams we've talked about today at the top of North America, that are successful in that department and are consistently successful in their communication and their nonverbal communication as well. I feel like version 1 tie themselves up too much, and there's something going on where it's either a lack of intrinsic trust, that nonverbal trust on the field, or something's going on verbally, but I don't really know about verbally, because Gimmick and Torment are probably two of the coolest in terms of mentality players that I know of. So it's hard for me to pinpoint one exact issue for this team, but their chemistry is obviously not there. And I don't know the way forward for this team. When they play against top teams like G2, they play them close. They look like they belong. But then these other teams that they're not used to playing against, they don't seem to have an answer for. They don't know how to play against them. They either give them too much respect or they push too hard. And then their third man, the ball just gets blown by them. So they have to figure out how to play with each other, because right now they're all over the place and it feels like everyone's reading a different book.
Yeah, that seems to be the case for Oxygen and EU as well. Like, people were mentioning Oxygen sort of in the same breath as version 1, as teams that you might think they would have performed better by this point in the season, but really results haven't been there for them. You know, that 2/3 of them obviously former Reciprocity boys before that team became inactive. One came from Dignitas and Astral. Like, it just seems like that team should be performing better, just to your point of version 1. Like, they just don't seem to be clicking right now.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening to Oxygen, especially in like earlier grid weeks. They were posting decent results, but anytime you ask them to perform in a regional, they can't do it. So Oxygen's even a bigger question mark to me as to why they aren't getting it done, because we have results and gameplay that tells us they can get it done. But where's the consistency? Where's that constant threat? Where is Farah on offense, demoing everybody on the line, opening lanes for his teammates? Where's Chaussette? Like, Chaussette has been absent this whole season, and we couldn't go a season in RLCS without talking about how Chaussette was going on one of his streaks where he was unbeatable. He hasn't been that type of player in a long time, and they've just fallen apart. And I don't know what the answer is for this team. I really don't. But Oxygen are one of those teams I want to be good. I love all of these players, and I want them to be successful. They haven't been able to put it together.
Last question for you, and we really appreciate everybody in chat throwing down some questions. This is more of a theme that we've gotten since we started doing Behind the Wheel. A lot of people had been talking about Rocket League going free to play, and certainly that's going to be a giant topic, and people are going to be monitoring users and numbers, etc., when this does happen. But specifically for Rocket League Esports, what do you think is going to happen once Rocket League goes free to play? How do you think Rocket League Esports will change, if at all?
I'm not sure the esport will change too much. I think what you will see is people who didn't want to pick up the game either because of the price tag, or they were just, involved in other games and, their time investment is sunk into other competitive games. It might be enough to push them to hit the download button and try out Rocket League for maybe another time, or maybe the first time. And there's so much. The best thing about coming into Rocket League free to play now versus getting the game for free when it went live on PlayStation Plus is the content and the community around this game. The content for how to get better at Rocket League is in a pristine shiny place. Like, people are posting new videos all the time. New content creators are popping up on YouTube with tutorials about new mechanics, old mechanics with new approaches. Like, the game is always evolving, even if it's evolving marginally over time. For someone who is just neck deep in the scene like I am, it might be hard to see the progress there. But when you really look at it over the span of even a year, the game itself has evolved in how players approach it, especially at a high level. I don't know if it's going to affect the esport all that much. Maybe it gives that next nudge to a player that wasn't doing it because they were playing another free-to-play game that they just wanted to sink all their time into. A lot of people don't have finances at their disposal to try out a lot of games and buy games that they're not sure they're going to keep playing. So I do think that going free to play is going to open the gates for the potential, but that's as far as I'm willing to go right now, is that the potential is unlocked by going free to play. I think it's a huge move. I think it's a great move, and I'm extremely excited for the update and the not revitalization, because we've had an extremely healthy player base, but to get that next nudge to really push Rocket League higher up on that most played list.
You've been great on this program, Jorby. We really appreciate having you here. You definitely have to come back sometime. Please do. Where can people find you next?
You can find me at The Grid on twitch.tv/TeamEnvy during the North American portion during the week, and then I will be on the weekend as well to close out the second regional for North America. I'm on every weekend as far as I know, so...
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate you in chat. And don't forget, give us suggestions, whether it's on Reddit, on Twitter, at ESPN_esports. We are constantly listening. We want to mold this into something that you will appreciate very much on a weekly basis and make this your one-stop shop. If you can only take 1 hour of Rocket League coverage and you want to get caught up as best as possible, this is the place that we want you to look at and the place to do it. So in the meantime and in between time, that is it for us. Good vibes and acts of kindness, everybody. We will catch you next week.